Sorry, all of those people in the 1700s that got a bit of a kick off of drinking other people's wee. Welcome! I'm DiabeQueen. Welcome to another episode of my channel on the YouTubes. That's going to be my intro now. It felt like a solid start to a video, you know? You may have noticed that these spectacles are on my face. I actually do need glasses to look at screens because otherwise I get a headache. But also, this video is about the history of insulin, so I thought I need to look like I've got my shit together and like I'm intelligent, you know? There is also alcohol in this. This is a gin and tonic that I got handed for free on the streets today by a lady wearing a rabbit mask. Only in Bristol, my friends. Has to be said, this gin tastes like grass. Like actual grass from the ground. I'm gonna drink it anyway. So as I said, this video is about the history of insulin, and I'm doing this because it is Insulin Safety Week. So I thought it was very befitting and appropriate to do a video about the history of insulin, where it all began, you know? So before we get into insulin itself, I thought I should chat about life before insulin. Diabetics, before insulin was invented, would often die. Also, interestingly, the way that diabetes was often diagnosed was that people would drink the urine of someone who they suspected to be diabetic to see if there was excess sugar in their wee. It was the early 19th century that chemical tests were actually developed to be able to detect excess sugar in urine, so, you know, sorry, all of those people in the 1700s that got a bit of a kick off of drinking other people's wee. Insulin. Let's start back in the year of 1869, where Paul Langerhans, am I pronouncing that right? When I hear Langerhans, do you know what I think of? I think of a man with very long hands, maybe like Slender Man, so really long arms and really long hands. So Paul Langerhans, medical student in Berlin, discovers a distinct collection of cells within the pancreas. These cells would later be called the islets of Langerhans, after Slender Man. And then, fast forward to 1889, we've got Oskar Minkowski, which again I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Joseph von Mering. Mering? Von Mering? Oh my god, I'm just butchering these names, I'm so sorry. They remove a dog's pancreas to study the effects on digestion. So Oskar Minkowski was the main scientist, he was the lead in this experiment. Von Mering was his assistant. And basically they initially set out to do this experiment to just see whether there were pancreatic enzymes within the pancreas that broke down fatty acids. So whilst they were doing that, von Mering actually tested the urine of the animals for glucose, and the high glucose levels marked the discovery of pancreatic diabetes. So following that, we're fast forwarding to 1901. Eugene Opie discovers that the islets of Langerhans produce insulin and that the destruction of these cells resulted in diabetes. And then we fast forward to 1916, where we've got yet another scientist discovering stuff about insulin. Now we've got Romanian professor Nicolae Popescu develops an extract of the pancreas and shows that it lowers blood sugar in diabetic dogs. So we're back to the dogs. I had no idea how much dogs played a part in the discovery of insulin, actually. It's quite fascinating to know, isn't it? I mean, I feel bad for the dogs that got experimented on and got their pancreas removed. That's not so fun. But you know, they were already dead, I'm guessing, so if they're dead, why not remove the pancreas, you know? So during this time, World War I is a thing. It's not great, and it prevents the experiments from continuing. And so it's not until 1921 that Popescu publishes evidence of the experiments. So we've got like a little gap. That's what, 1921 from 16. That's 5 years that Popescu did not release any of his discoveries. And then we have even more experiments with dogs in 1921, following the release of Popescu's experiments. We've got Dr. Frederick Banting, a medical student, Charles Best, perform experiments on the pancreases of dogs in Toronto, Canada. Professor John McLeod provides Banting and the Best with a laboratory to carry out the experiments. So, thanks John McLeod. The pancreas was then sliced and ground up into an injectable extract. That just sounds horrible, doesn't it? And then this is injected a few times a day, which helped the dog to regain health. So obviously they weren't injecting humans with this is only dogs at this point. So McLeod, who was the guy who provided Dr. Banting and his student Charles Best with the laboratory to carry out the experiments, he then wants to see more evidence that the procedure worked. And so provides pancreases from cows. So we've got bigger animals than dogs now to make the extract, which is named insulin. Isn't that just incredible? Just shy of 100 years ago, insulin is discovered, and then you look at how far medical treatment for diabetes has developed since then. It's incredible. It's really amazing to see, and it makes me feel very happy that I live. I mean, obviously having a cure for type 1 diabetes would be fantastic, but just it's really amazing that myself and other type 1 diabetics were not diagnosed in like the 1900s or the 1800s, where it was often fatal and there wasn't any form of treatment. So we've got a biochemist who joins the team at this point called Bertram Collip. Oh my god, I really hope that I'm not completely fucking up these names. So he joins the research team and he helps them purify the insulin so that they can actually test on humans. So we're moving up a step from cows. So Banting and Best, they had the confidence to continue the experiments and wanted to start testing on humans. So they were like totally on board with Collip, helping them out, and actually tested the insulin by injecting themselves with it, which caused them to experience weakness and dizziness, signs of hypoglycemia, as you would expect from people that aren't diabetic. How brave though that they were so dedicated to the cause and they were so confident in their own findings that they injected themselves with insulin. That's incredibly brave and also very dangerous. After the group had tested this and they deemed it safe to start trying on other people, they started trying it on other patients, on other humans. So the first boy to receive treatment was called Leonard Thompson, and this is in 1922. He's a 14-year-old boy with type 1, is the first one to receive treatment. And the second dose that was purified by Collip is successful. And Leonard lived for another 13 years, which 13 years doesn't sound that great when you're 14, but previously patients with type 1 diabetes would be put onto starvation diets and would only have months to live. And Leonard actually died from pneumonia in the end, so it's possible that he could have lived for longer if he hadn't got pneumonia. Poor Leonard, man. Poor Leonard. So this news spread that insulin was successful, so more and more people started using insulin as a way of treating diabetes, and Banting and Best continued to improve their techniques for the production of insulin. Eli Lilly becomes the first insulin manufacturer. Oh, this is really humbling to see. So Banting and McLeod were the ones who were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1923, but they didn't want to take full credit, so they made sure that Best and Collip were equally eligible and shared their prize money with them, which is really humbling and nice to see. Good job, 1923 scientists. Fast forward, we're skipping 13 years into the future. This is 1936. We've got Danish physician Hans Christian Hagedorn discovers the action of insulin can be prolonged with the addition of protamine. For those of you who don't know what protamine is, interestingly, protamine is actually a protein that delivers the sperm DNA into the nucleus of the egg following fertilization. So this is a goddamn sex protein. For a scientist to discover that that helps prolong the effects of insulin, how do you get to that point where you're like, you know what? You know that protein that delivers sperm DNA? Maybe that's going to prolong the effects of insulin. I'm questioning the process here, but you know, it's changed a lot of people's lives, so let's not doubt the scientist too much as to his methods. Do you think he like accidentally spermed onto them? You know what, I can't get into this, it's just gonna get too vile. So moving on from sperm man, we're going to sperm man. Jesus Christ, it's like the shittest superhero ever, isn't it? 1950, Novo Nordisk, which many diabetics will be familiar with. It's a very famous insulin distributor. It's a Danish company, which I didn't actually know until looking at this, which now that I look at the name, Nordisk, that's very Danish. So MPH is the name of the insulin that they first distribute in 1950, an intermediate acting insulin. And then 5 years into the future, 1955, insulin is sequenced by British biochemist, British represent, Frederick Sanger, sequences insulin, and insulin becomes the first protein to be fully sequenced. And in 1958, Sanger receives the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his research. And then, 8 years into the future, insulin becomes the first human protein to be chemically synthesized. So for those of you who don't know what that means, because I definitely didn't, chemical synthesis is a purposeful execution of chemical reactions to obtain a product or several products. So Sanger, British dude, from, get the date right, oh my god, from 1955, he was the first dude, him and his colleagues, to successfully sequence insulin, and that was in sheep insulin actually. What that means, so protein sequencing refers to the methods for determining the amino acid sequence of proteins or peptides. So it's basically understanding what insulin is made up of, like what peptides it's made up of, as I understand it. Before I kind of go on with this video, I have to tell you, I do not have that scientific a mind, so it's taking me a while to understand this myself. So if any of you understand this more, please comment down below, or if there's anything that I'm saying that sounds like utter bollocks, let me know. But as I understand it, that is what it means to sequence a protein, which is what insulin is. So yeah, we get to insulin being the first human protein to be chemically synthesized. So basically, using insulin, it is synthesized to produce more insulin. The chemical synthesis results in more of it being created. And then we get to 1978, where biotechnology from Genentech uses recombinant DNA techniques to produce synthetic human insulin. And then a few years later, we get to 1982, and synthetic insulin is renamed human insulin. Oh my god, I can't fucking speak today. Human insulin, marking it as distinct from insulin derived from animals. So prior to this, we found insulin that's been derived from animals. You know, the dog insulin, the cow insulin. And now we've actually got to human insulin. So the synthetic insulin has been renamed human insulin so that it's noticeably separated from animal insulin. So this is a huge turning point in the history of insulin, and the fact that that was only in the 80s that was created is nuts. To think about how far, I know I said this earlier, but to think about how far treatment has come since then, I can't believe that human insulin was only just established in 1982. That is just really not that long ago. And then we get to 1985, where Danish company, Novo Nordisk, as we were talking about earlier, introduces the insulin pen delivery system. So, you know, the pens that we're all used to. And then we get to another exciting form of treatment, the pump. The pump is released in 1992, so the first version of it, and that's by Medtronic, and they released the Mini Med 506 insulin pump, which delivered meal, bolus, memory, and daily insulin totals. And then in 1996, we get Eli Lilly markets the analog insulin Lispro under the trade name Humalog. So Humalog, for those of you who don't know, is just another form of rapid acting insulin. So you have two kinds, Humalog and Novolog. I think that's the only two. Obviously you've got nighttime insulin as well, so that's glargine, and you know, that's a different kind of insulin. But in terms of fast-acting insulin, Humalog is a type of that. Basically, it's just a different insulin, and it changed the way insulin is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted. So it's just a different kind of insulin that can help certain diabetics. So if Novolog was not working for a diabetic, they can try Humalog and see if that works better. So this is, again, another huge turning point in insulin treatment. Okay, and now we get to some really serious shit, and this is stuff that I have actively avoided doing because it's scary and it's a risky procedure from what I've heard, but year 2000, more than 470 patients with type 1 diabetes received islet cell transplantation during the next 5 years. What is islet cell transplantation, I hear you ask? Well, basically, it's a transplantation of isolated islets from a donor pancreas into another person. So, the problem with a lot of donor treatment is that you have to take anti-rejection drugs a lot of the time so that it sticks. This is just confirmed. The procedures help diabetes patients become free from insulin, providing they take immunosuppressant drugs. So you're going from taking insulin to taking another kind of drug, and plus with donor treatment it's kind of risky in that it might not take, and I think you can get quite ill from that. So I think personally it's not really a smart way of doing it. I mean, it obviously depends on the person, and treatment is very subjective when it comes to type 1, but I would say it's just not a good method. Now we're going to 2013, we're almost up to date. The University of Cambridge develops an artificial pancreas, this is very exciting, that pairs the technology of an insulin pump with a continuous glucose monitor. So this is the kind of modern day pump that people are familiar with. So the artificial pancreas is a very exciting new form of treatment that I've seen many people use online. A lot of you may have seen the term CGM being thrown around, and that is the continuous glucose monitor, which is paired with an insulin pump. So it's a little sensor that goes onto your tummy. You have to move it around where, the spots that you're using, and then you'll have like your insulin pump as well, and they connect to each other, which is very cool. And I've never actually used one before, so again, I'd be really intrigued to hear people's feedback on using the CGM system with the pump. So if you are on that kind of treatment, let me know, because I'm really looking to change my treatment, or to just look into different kinds of diabetes treatment. I'm just curious, because the treatment I'm on at the moment is working for me. I'm just on rapid injections, and I just test my sugar levels myself, but the world of diabetes technology is developing so much that it would be a shame to not try out these different kinds of tech. And this particularly excites me, this CGM system with the pump. And I've never ever used a pump, and I was always anti it because I didn't want anything on my skin. But the more I've looked into it, the more I actually think it would be pretty cool, and it would make treatment so much easier. So I'd love to hear your feedback. If you are on this treatment, let me know. And then we get even more techie. 2015, Dr. Edward Damiano introduces the islet, which he calls a bridge to a cure. And this is basically a bionic pancreas. So it's similar to the artificial pancreas that the University of Cambridge produced, but basically it's just a bit cleverer. So it still uses a CGM system, and it still links with an insulin pump, but basically it's just a little bit more intelligent. So it's got like an AI assisted algorithm which tracks glucose levels and delivers intelligently calculated doses of insulin. How fucking cool is that? And that brings us up to modern day, which this is an article that was released on the 20th of May of this year, so this is very, very recent. But there is a new smart insulin developed to prevent hypoglycemia, and if you're interested in reading the article, which has only just been released, I've shared it on my Twitter, which is @DiabeQueen, or I can leave the link to the article in the description box below. But it's basically a smart insulin that has been developed to help prevent hypoglycemia. Has been developed by the team from the University of California, UCLA, and they've added an extra molecule to the hormone, which they say can prevent low blood sugar levels. How incredible is that? So that's really interesting, because my main problem with diabetes, and I'd love to know if any of you experience the same issue, is that I tend to have hypos more often than I have hypers. And it's a problem, especially for someone who likes to stay active, likes to go on runs quite regularly. I go low so often, and it's really difficult to maintain an active lifestyle when that is such a regular issue. So I'm really intrigued to see how this develops, and hopefully it'll become part of the NHS so I can actually get it for free. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, a history of insulin. I have certainly enjoyed it as well. I feel like I have learned so much about insulin. It's been really great refreshing my knowledge of the protein as well, and it's just incredible to see how far we have come in such a short space of time. The fact that human insulin was only, or like synthetic insulin, which was then renamed as human insulin, was only established in the 80s. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. Doing this video has made me feel quite grateful for the treatment that is available to type 1s now, and type 2s. And I hope that this has been an interesting video for you. And as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm doing this because it is Insulin Safety Week. And so to finish this video, I'm just going to say, stay safe. Stay safe, my DiabeQueens, because diabetes is a chronic disease that is lifelong if you're a type 1. So it's important to keep yourself safe. Make sure that you are using your insulin, make sure that you are staying safe, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and I love you. Bye. Until next time.